Good morning everyone, welcome to our daily thought. We are in Ephesians. We are nearly at the end. Oh, cutting off a bit of my head. Should I roll my head in? There we go. Not that my hair is particularly on point today, but you know, it's nice to see my whole head. Should have found this, there we go. So we are reading from Ephesians 5. Verses 1 to 4. And fair warning, it might only be 4 verses long, but there's at least 2 sermons hidden in these verses, so I'll try not to keep you too long, but I'm just warning you. So Ephesians 5 verse 1 to 4. Follow God's example, therefore, as dearly loved children, and walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. But among you there must not be even a hint of sexual immorality, or of any kind of impurity, or of greed, because these are improper for God's holy people. Nor should there be obscenity, foolish talk, or coarse joking, which are out of place, but rather thanksgiving. So, let's start with the first 2 verses, verses 1 and 2. Follow God's example, therefore, as dearly loved children. So the first thing to note is that we follow God's example because we're his children. And when I was reading it, I was thinking about my friends who adopted these 2 kids. They're lovely kids. And everyone always says how much Jacob, who's their son, looks like Luke, the dad. And then, I'm going to have a visitor now. They're not at all biologically related. Jacob is 100% adopted. But he does look like Luke, and he looks like Luke because of the way that he makes facial expressions. He literally copies Luke's facial expressions, and he's not doing that on purpose because he's been doing that since he was 2 or 3 when they first had him. He's doing it because he is a child of Luke. And when we're around someone a lot, when we respect someone, when we look up to someone, when we love them, when we follow them, we start to act like them, we start to look like them. And that is the challenge, really. If you don't know if you are a child of God, if you don't know if you've really accepted him, the first question is, do you believe? And then the next question is, can you see a change in your life? Can you see you becoming more like Jesus? Just like Jacob became more like Luke, can you see yourself pulling the same facial expressions as God? And then it goes on to say that we need to walk in love just as Christ loved us. So that's not the kind of love that I have for chocolate biscuits, and that, trust me, is a deep love for chocolate biscuits. But that's not the kind of love that they're talking about in this passage. Paul is talking about the kind of love that would die on a cross for someone, and not just someone, but all the someones, you know, the friends, the neighbours that annoy you, the family relatives that are arrogant and annoy you, and you know, the people that are hard to love, they're the ones you've got to love. You know, it's easy for me to love my chocolate biscuits, it's easy for me to love my kids, my husband, my friends. It's not so easy for me to love the people who aren't nice to me, but that's the kind of love that we're looking for. That's the kind of love that Jesus offers us, because let's face it, we're all not very nice sometimes. And then we hit sermon number 2 in verses 3 and 4, which talks about sexual immorality and coarse language and things like that. And I often use this verse when I'm talking to young people, where it says there must not even be a hint of sexual immorality. And what I say to the young people is, if people think you're doing something you shouldn't be doing, that's just as bad. So you know, if you're sleeping over at your boyfriend's house, people are going to think you're having sex. And that's just as bad as if you were having sex. That's probably not as applicable to you guys watching today, but that's kind of how I always apply that to the young people. I think really Paul is talking about language all the way through. I know it talks about a hint of sexual immorality, but I guess it links on to verse 4, where he talks about foolish talk and coarse joking. It's all linked together. You know, do you use sex, or even some of the other impurities and greed and things, do you use that as part of your joking language? And it's really hard because our society loves to do that, doesn't it? Our society loves to make coarse jokes and banter and things like that, and I love banter, but where's the line? How do we find the line on that? I'm a big believer in my gut, because I think the Holy Spirit is in me, and not in my gut. I haven't eaten it, and those are the chocolate biscuits. But I believe that the Holy Spirit does convict us, and sometimes I've been in conversations and you know when it's gone too far, you feel it. That's the Holy Spirit convicting you. That's the Holy Spirit saying, hey, that was too much, that was too far. Like, don't say that again, don't go down that route again. And it's okay, we all go down the wrong route sometimes, and that's what forgiveness and grace is for, and that's all good. But we need to be aware of it, and I think sometimes we can argue that, you know, I'm speaking like this because I want people to relate to me. You know, I can't use all these Christianese language because people won't get that. I need to speak how they speak, otherwise they're going to think I'm weird and I'm not relatable. But actually, sometimes the way you are different is what attracts people to you. I remember being in an art class when I was in year 9, so I would have been 14 maybe, and I swore, I said the F word. And the girl sitting next to me, she wasn't even really one of my friends, she was just in my art class, she just looked at me and she went, I didn't know you swore. And I just felt so like she noticed, you know, she wasn't a friend, she wasn't someone I hung out with, but she knew that I was someone who didn't swear, and she knew that I didn't swear because I was a Christian. And then when I swore, she was like, oh, and people are noticing, people are watching you, people are looking to see how you act as a Christian, how you act as the verse 3 says, as God's holy people. You know, we are expected to live up to this standard. That doesn't mean you can't fail, because we all fail, but we've got to be trying. And you know, these excuses that we use of just fitting in with culture and it's just banter, do you know what, frankly, they're not good enough. If you're using coarse language, if you're using sex as a joke, it's not good enough. You know, we hear all the time about these like historical cases of men who have abused women, and sometimes it's just banter. And you know, it's never just banter. If you're a Christian, you know, because we see these Christian leaders failing as well recently, haven't we? We've seen and we've heard about it, and it's just what they did then. It's just part of the culture. It doesn't matter, we're not part of the culture. You know, this verse was here 60 years ago. So 60 years ago, if those men were acting like that, they still could have read this verse. And if you're a man and you think it's okay to make those jokes, or a woman, and you know, women, we're not immune to this. We make these kind of jokes too. It's not okay. We are expected to act different. We are a holy people. I think my rant's over. I'll leave you with that. But yeah, really challenging verses. So yeah, I'd encourage you to read it. I'd encourage you to think about your life, your language. How do you speak? What are you hinting at? What immorality are you hinting at by the way that you communicate with people? Are you hinting at God, or are you hinting at immorality? One more thing, my rant's not quite over, I forgot. Someone always told me, it was more linked with pornography, but I think it applies to everything. You can't take something out of your life without replacing it with something else. So the person was saying, if you watch pornography, you can't just stop. You have to replace it with something else. You have to watch something else. And this verse is a prime example of that. You know, he says, nor should you do this, but rather thanksgiving. So that's what we got to do. Every time you think, do you know what, I'm going to make a joke about sex. I'm going to make a joke about greed and about impurity. Nah, turn it around and use thanksgiving. You know, say, oh God, I'm so thankful that it's raining today, because that means I don't have to water my plants. You know, find something to be thankful for, because there is so much to be thankful for, and replace that coarse language with God language, with praise, with grace. I've got a visitor, can you see him? You say hi, Asher.
Hi.
Hi. We're going to say bye now as well, because Mummy's finished ranting. Can you say bye?
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.